Cool. All right, we're live on YouTube and Twitch.
Oh, so it is YouTube. Okay, sweet. I'm gonna let them know that.
It's on both.
Nice.
So, good there. Streamlabs. Q, open. Move. Cool. All right, questions and queue is open. The YouTube ones I'm gonna have to take like copy and paste notes from, but that's fine. Boom, 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 boom.
All right, this is StrikeBoogie. We are live now on the XP Talk Show with Conky Talks. Please join us at twitch.tv/Conky Talks. There'll be a link somewhere at the bottom. I'll have it there for you. Make sure you join. Oops, that totally cut me off. Damn.
That's okay. People appreciate bloopers, man.
I am a walking blooper, I think.
Same.
Oh my goodness. Okay, let me try this again. Maybe I have to go to the actual. Yeah, there we go. Hey everyone, this is Strike, and we are live now on the XP Talk Show with Conky Talks. I'm so screwing this up, but it's okay because we're live, and we were just talking about how we like to be our own bloopers and stuff, so it's all good. Join me at twitch.tv/Conky Talks. We're gonna be doing a whole thorough interview where he's gonna just like pry and prod and all those other words. You know the words for that as well. Join me, and yeah, we'll see you soon, really soon. Again, Conky Talks, twitch.tv. See ya. So, yeah. And I am a clown. Perfect.
Professional clown. Professional. Hi, everybody who's in the Twitch chat right now. Thank you for your patience while we're ensuring that the stream is set up. Let me make sure my commands are working. Exclamation point strike boogie.
Woo!
There we go. There's all your social media links. And, oh yeah, the DistroKid link. Let me get that in there. I'll put that like exclamation point music. DistroKid. There it is. Oh, I have to announce the Discord, of course. Announcements. There we go. Awesome. Cool. We're all good there.
Everything running smooth on your end.
Yep. From what it's looking like here. Oh, thank God. Usually I like to give about like 10 minutes or so for everybody to like get in here and
Yeah.
all that fun stuff.
Give me enough time to run this whole thing here. Let everyone know it's good. Probably gonna get a bunch of alerts saying that you need to approve this linking of Instagram stories.
Yeah. Not me. I mean, you're the artist, you know? Like I haven't gotten that far yet. Hey, yeah, we're good to see you, bud. Okay. Oh, you're on the road right now listening? That's very cool. That's very cool. Okay. Hey, James, good to see you, dude. My homies, thank you for being here. Really appreciate it. For everybody who's just been like lurking and listening, this is the first XP Talk Show in a long time, very long time. And it's gonna be a good one. This is actually the only one we're gonna be doing for the next month or so. I wanted to give myself like time to breathe and ease back into streaming, and we'll talk a little bit more about it on the show when we actually get started, but it means a lot that y'all are here. Thank you. Okay, that's good. We're good there. Oh, there we go. Glad I caught that. Just some minor changes. Cool. Nice.
Right.
Okay. Okay.
Finally done here.
We are good.
We are good.
All right. One last thing. Let me grab you drinking makes me. I gotta grab my water. BRB.
Yes. I think I see the Hunger James in the chat. What's up? I see you lurking on my Instagram from time to time, so it's good to see you here as well. This is where I originally found you. Yeah.
Hey, Cletus.
I think I see some of my people up in here too. I see Daniela's here, and my friend Adam is here. Yeah, there's some peeps up in here. Cool.
Bam. Okay, poll's going. Got that going. Okay. Oh, nice. All right. Before we get started, what y'all have been listening to has been the introduction to StrikeBoogie, our guest today's new single, Sail Away. And if y'all have been enjoying the vibe, wait until you hear the vocals come in. All right. And if you'd like to check out StrikeBoogie's single, Sail Away, you can get it at that distro kid link. There is a bunch of different platforms in there, Spotify, Apple Music, etc., etc. So please check it out. And without further ado, here is the full master of the song Sail Away.
Side, it sounds like an acapella.
Oh, it does?
Yeah, totally. Instrumental is almost non-existent on my side. It's kind of cool.
Oh, so they didn't get rid of it entirely. This is what I was talking about. The audio like comes through like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just to like, 'cause I love just acapella, and I never actually listened to acapella for this song.
Oh, really?
Never. But right now I'm experiencing it because of this weird thing that's going on.
Well, thank you, Discord, for this new update.
Yeah. So how many of those hair clips do you have?
A couple.
Yeah.
1 second, guys. I had a problem with the separate PC where the audio was coming from. So give me 1 second while I get that rebooted. But yeah, just a couple. I really like my hair's in this weird in between stage where it's like long enough to be in a headband, but not long enough to like actually put back. So it gets in my face and my hair's like super curly and it's a pain in my ass for the most part. Okay, cool. I was like, if I need to restart the stream, I'm going to be so upset.
Oh my gosh, trust me, I understand that all too well.
Yeah. Technical issues. Come on, guys. Y'all know what's up. Y'all have experienced that before.
All these conferences, and then the last few conferences I've had to literally anticipate it freezing. So I try to have like this face where I'm smiling all the time. So if it freezes with me smiling and not with like a derp face, because like I can't. Nothing's more annoying than being frozen on a derp face trying to explain myself.
You should have like I got to see that firsthand at PAX West, like when I went, because people are demoing the games they made, and like it's so intimate, you know. You're like sharing a thing you've been working on for years, you know. And there's like maybe 3 or 4 devs, and like their game would freeze while we're playing, and they'd be like, "I'm so sorry." Like, oh my God. I'm like, I can't even imagine having to do that like on a regular basis. This project that like people are enjoying, and then all of a sudden the game fucks up, and you're like, well, I guess I'll not play this anymore. And you're like, ah!
Yeah, it's that's stunting. Yeah, it's really, it sucks. It sucks when that happens. But
okay. So apologies for the interruption of the song. But I mean, I think y'all got the vibe for what's going on. So the instrumental is going to be playing in the background the whole time. So again, if you want to check out StrikeBoogie's music, it's just !music here. You'll get all the links related to that. And then as far as the show goes, I guess I should transition to just like my screen so y'all can see my face, right? So hello, hi everybody. So welcome to the Exp Talk Show. My name is Steve, Conky Talks. It's been quite a bit since we've done one of these shows, these interviews, and a lot of that has to do with obviously like my stepping away from streaming and all that. It is during my stepping away from streaming, I had totally disregarded my website, which allowed you to schedule talk show interviews. So while that was happening, I got an email notifying me of a show, and I'm not gonna lie, my first emotional response was like, fuck, I'm not ready for a talk show after taking a step back from streaming and not being really present for that. And I'm very glad that I received the notification from this person, StrikeBoogie, which we're going to be speaking with today, because for StrikeBoogie was one of the creators that I got introduced to from a mutual friend. It's Yosh. Shout out to It's Yosh. Yosh is awesome. He's known StrikeBoogie for like literally years since Boogie's been doing. Is it okay if I call you Boogie, by the way?
Yeah, you can call me whatever.
Okay. Since Boogie's been doing his thing, like digital art illustration, that sort of thing, before transitioning to music. And after, hanging out in streams and like actually getting to talk with him, I realized that there was some sort of vibrational accord is what I've talked about on stream. And just to elaborate on what that means, a lot of people like, oh, it's a vibe. Like that word to me is very watered down. It doesn't really explain much, but I think there's a lot of like things you can comprehend from it, right? And so I think that everybody, based on their life experience, and this is where it gets kind of woo-woo, but this is just, again, my belief, they exhibit or showcase music all the time in the way they speak, the way they carry themselves, the way they make art, the way they just are as a human being. And every once in a while you come across somebody that is in the same vibration as you, making the same music or similar music or close enough to the same chords. And that's how I felt about Boogie. And I hope you guys enjoy this conversation. Again, we'll be taking questions throughout the entire duration of the show. So if you have any, Boogie's got the chat pulled up so we can answer in the moment. But if you're afraid your question is going to be missed, you can queue it up, ! Q, and then type out your question or anecdote, and then we'll be sure to ask it at the end of stream. And without further ado, let's get into the conversation. Hi, Boogie. Good to see you.
Sweet. Yeah, it's good to see you too.
It's almost like we were talking
like
a week ago,
Literally, it's like we just never left. It's like camera on, camera off, camera on, and then here we are.
Yeah. Well, I think that's kind of like how I don't know. I feel like a lot of relationships in general, and I think we talked about this a little bit during the pre-talk show interview. The like ability to just like kind of pick up where you left off and like share what you've been working on, or just like shoot the shit. You can kind of, there's like no awkwardness to it. It's like you just pick up where you left off. It's that's something that I felt like has always been present. And for everybody who is not familiar with you, let's do like a little brief introduction. Go ahead and tell everybody who you are and a little bit about what you do.
Okay. Well, I'm StrikeBoogie, and I am a creative director of the sorts, or creative artist of the sorts, in the arts and entertainment. I make music, I draw, I'm an illustrator professionally, and I do photography, videography, everything you can possibly think of. I act, I do soundtrack production, involved in some animation stuff. Like it's pretty intense in terms of what I do and how much I do. And I've been doing it for a really long time. I would say professionally, I've been working in the industry of the arts and entertainment for about 21 years. And I've worked with a lot of different companies. I've once worked with Neo Geo SNK through a side company with Marvel. I've worked with Don Richard from Bad Boy Productions or Bad Boy Records during the time that she was with Diddy Dirty Money on a comic book series that she released, and I did all the cover artwork for her. Oh boy, there's just a list,
There's
and I
a
always
lot.
forget about it because I never write just so much stuff that I just kind of like accepted forgetting about it and just moving on to the next thing. I always just like working on the next thing, and I don't really like sit too much on the stuff I've done in the past, especially because a lot of what I put out into the universe now is so much different than what I did back then. So I guess that's what we're going to talk about anyway. So
Yeah, we're going to talk about it.
What that is. Yeah, exactly. He's been itching. He's been itching like Dave Chappelle when he's like, I want some crack. Like, he's been kind of doing that.
I have, yeah. Like during the whole pre-talk show interview, like I would get like little snippets, little whiffs, like ooh, that smells good, you know. Like I want to explore more with this conversation, but I was like, we gotta shut the fuck up. Like we can't talk about it right now, you know. Like we gotta save that juice for the show. So let's unpack this, and we're gonna go like in stages. A lot of the stuff that we've already talked a lot about it about this stuff in snippets, but again, like we're gonna be getting into the weeds a bit. So I really want to start with like, how did you start pursuing being a generalist, and like how did you figure out, you know, how that was going to be a thing? Because usually when it comes down to an artist, and this was like my perspective, you know, going into college, because I also went to art school, for those people who don't know, but I didn't really have like an artistic background. I was more of dabbling in a bunch of different things. And so the term generalist was genuinely like frowned upon by my colleagues, by like school, by, you know, literally anybody that was like trying to get into the industry, because from that perspective, it was like, well, you're not really good at one particular thing. And so for you to like, you know, give your time and energy to not just one thing, but like everything, how did you decide you were going to pursue that? And like, how was that, you know, decided for you?
Well, it's actually the other way around for me. And I think that's where the conversation gets a little interesting, is that I've always been a generalist. I've always been doing everything. And when I reached high school, I had the notion that yes, there has to be something I streamline myself in, but I was never going to stop being a generalist. So
Okay.
for myself, I was like, okay, let me pick something that I need a challenge in, that I wasn't particularly experienced in, that happened to be visual arts.
Okay.
And I wasn't that good at it at all. I just felt that, like anything else that I've put my time and energy into, I will evolve, and I know where to focus my energy. And I wanted to be an animator, and I want to be an animation director, to be specific. And this was before I had this idea that I wanted to be a judge. So I actually wanted to be a lawyer to become a judge. But then I was like, this is conflicting with my ability to actually have a voice. So that switched into me going, after all those things that I said I know how to do, and I was doing them kind of on and off, I had this idea that that's what I wanted to do. But then that shifted in high school, where I was just like, you know what, I want to focus on art. And it's the thing that comes natural to me. So, but I needed to just have people focus on what that was, because I wasn't really comfortable with sharing all the other things that I could do in high school for whatever reason. I don't know. I just wasn't in my skin the way that I am now. So I was like, you know what? Let me just challenge myself. Let me do something that people can see that I'm growing into, as opposed to people jumping into something that I might have already done, but then start judging me on that. So I chose visual art, and specifically Japanese animation in comic books, westernized comic books. So I put a lot of work and effort into that.
Yeah, before we get into like, you know, the specifics on like the artwork, I'm really interested in the direction. So like high school is obviously like a really big moment for a lot of people. It's where, you know, you sort of get these like behaviors and agreements that necessarily aren't yours, right? People are telling you where to go, what they want you to do, especially like if it's from your parents or people that you love or care about or trust. And that can, I don't want to use the word like damage, but those agreements being put on you and you not creating those agreements and them being yours alone can conflict. So like, was that where the judge like lawyer thing, was that agreement, like, was that one of those agreements that wasn't yours? And then you were just like,
That was mine.
that was yours?
No one's
Okay.
ever made the decisions on what I wanted to do. No one's ever really done that with me before.
Okay.
I've always just had this idea that that's what I wanted to do. I just loved because I just have so many dimensions to me, and that was one of my dimensions. I love law. I don't know. It's very odd in that regard. I
Okay.
just found that on a personal level, I didn't have the voice. You know, when someone is able to speak their mind and speak their embodiment of self, I didn't have that. So for me, it kind of went against me wanting to be a lawyer or a judge.
Okay, so you created this conflict within yourself, and then you decided to like pursue the things that were more aligned with your ability to be more you, which is very unique. And I say that because like from my own life experience conflicts with that entirely. I had all this external agreements like being thrust upon me. And I felt like I had to go in a specific direction. I didn't really understand who I was until I was in my like early 20s, and I was still like, oh, here's a thread of like who I'm trying to be, what I'd like to pursue, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So besides yourself, like who was helping you embrace you? Like who was helping you like along with that?
There were very few people that I would say that did. My brother JC, he was a major influence. I mean, he'd pretty much been grooming me to be a walking archive of hip hop and since I was a child. He'd tell me stories of how he would just like play record players like all around me when I was a toddler, and like we just constantly played music in the house all the time, and he was always engraving stuff in me. So like I think that because I loved that so much too, he just kept it going like all the time, just kept being himself around me, and then that would just happen to be in line with him. And then my sister Diane, she also, when she used to notice all these random things that I would do, random acts of creation, she would stop me and she'd be like, do you not realize what you're doing? This is so creative. Oh my gosh, you got to keep doing this. And whatever, every single time I do something, she would point it out.
So you had that encouragement like in your family. So these behaviors were being reinforced in that regard.
Yeah.
Okay.
I would say that
cool.
they were not all the time, but they were often enough for me to just be able to like staple when they happened and how they happened, and yeah.
Okay. No, that's really great. That's like I don't know, that's a very that's a beautiful thing to like have your siblings, especially. And I remember on your website, how many siblings do you have?
I have 10. There's 10 of us.
Yeah, that's
well, we know.
That's a family. Like that's like your own self-sustaining ecosystem. Like y'all are watching and like growing and like becoming each other. So it's like you have slight variations of like you remember how we talked about like you or me living a different life? Like that's probably like the closest you could possibly be. You know, to like, okay, this is me slightly different. This is me slightly different. Like you have gradients of like existence.
It's true. Yeah.
So
and I'm the second oldest, so yeah, I definitely see how like things trickle downward and like how that influences people in their life. Like my sister Chantal and I are like pretty much twins. Like obviously she's a girl, a woman.
Sure.
But like we are very, very similar.
That's awesome.
We're very, very like we're all like about like just being light and welcoming, and you know, yeah, that's just how we are.
That's great. That's great. So tell me a little bit about this like creative alchemy term that you coined. So like creative alchemy was like something that you had developed, and we talked a little bit about this in the show or in the pre-talk show, where like this wasn't even like a term. It was a behavior or things. It was things you were already doing, but like you didn't have a definition for it or like a way of explaining it. It was just you doing. And so we talked briefly about this, where like much like the ADHD thing for me, having these behaviors and things that like, this is a little bit in the opposite way. Things that I didn't like or things that I didn't know what was going on, like until it was defined for me, did things start changing for the better. And I assume that probably was the same thing for you with this whole creative alchemy thing. So tell us a little bit more about that, what that means.
So I guess the creative alchemy for me means being able to, I guess, be in touch with and also be able to conjure creative outcomes based on your understanding of everything in the arts and entertainment. Understanding it from the most like minuscule level to the most general level, I feel are the most important things in order to understand the aspect of creative alchemy and how to bring them all together to create a more influential outcome with what you present. And for myself, I feel like there are a lot of people who are out there. There's probably a lot of people that are like me that don't know how to define their own creative output and the amount of things that people can do, or they've been told, you know, they can't do that, and but they still are that. And for me, I've always been able to do so many different things at once. I wasn't able to do everything, but I was able to do quite a few things at once. And it wasn't until I was about 8 years old that I came to realize what I was doing was possible. And Prince, being an artist, was one of those people who really, really solidified that in my mind. Because once I realized he could play every instrument known to man, I was like, well, that takes a lifetime. And he's much older than I am, and, you know, rest in peace. But like, he had the time to do that. And I was 8 years old when I discovered this. So when I had already had like 5 different things I could do under my belt, I was like, well, now here's the theory. And I went with that theory, and I just kept going and going and going with that until eventually I got to where I am, where I can pretty much do everything in the arts and entertainment for myself. And I didn't know what that was supposed to mean. I didn't know what the purpose was of that was, but I knew that I loved the arts and entertainment so much, from a minuscule level to a general level, that I just wanted to do it all, and I just went with it.
That's awesome. And you said that, like, I mean, you said there was 3 people that made you realize that this was a thing. So was Prince one of those people, or are you talking about
Prince was.
Okay,
yeah.
okay. So what about the other 2 people?
Michael Jackson was also one of the other people. Because I just seen so much of his, like, the way that his allure, his mystique, the way that he was shy about kind of showing everything that he could do. He didn't really show everything that he could do in his lifetime, unfortunately.
True.
But
yeah,
there were so many things that he could do and wanted to do and did do. And that really inspired me too, just watching him grow and evolve into these things and kind of go in and out of things. So that kind of really was what I was doing too. Prince kind of solidified that could be possible by being those things already and being able to exuberate them on albums and music that you'd listen to. And my brother JC, he's a really, really big influence to me. Like I said, I mean, he literally made me a walking archive of music when I was like around that age, 8 years old. I could tell everyone and everything about like the history of hip hop and like my favorite artists and, you know, everything, like the credits on every single booklet. Like I just knew everything. And it was just a whole bunch of that. And then just the influences that I had around me from reggae music, calypso and soca, rock music, R&B, which was a big thing with my mom. My mom loved her R&B, and that was what I listened to a lot. That's exactly those 3 things together, and just that the general musical influences around me were what really solidified that whole idea of just going with the theory that if I just delegate myself little by little at a very young age, just start early and just like keep building until I get to that point where everything converges, that it will converge. And that's what I did.
That's amazing. Yeah, and so you had this like conduit essentially of like your family and these musical influences that were introduced to you by your family that allowed you to, not allowed you, but gave you the ideas that you could pursue more than one thing and be successful at it based on that. That's fantastic. Yeah, and I guess like I mean, this kind of leads into the next topic I really want to get into is about like being an artist. For me personally, has been a very like emotionally freeing sort of experience, and what I mean by that is like for me, like my childhood growing up wasn't the easiest, and so art, music in some regard, and just like expressing myself in more than just like one facet of artistry was a release of those emotional things. And so like my childhood was extremely emotional in a variety of different ways, and I feel like that's a huge factor in being an artist. And like we talked about the potency of emotions and how like connecting with people and like being heard and understood is a big part of like the art we create and the things we'd like to do. It's why this talk show came to be. Is like I want to be heard. I also want to connect with individuals, and I want to feel like I have the attention of the person I'm speaking to. And I can't help but think that's a huge factor in what you're doing. And you know, us talking so much about your family, like having 10 siblings, that's a lot of attention being distributed to all of you. Do you think that was like a factor in you pursuing the arts in the way that you did?
I have to say that it probably was a major thing for me. Having that happen, and then also just my internal struggle in general. I feel like the first part of my life was a survival mechanism that I didn't realize was a survival mechanism. Just embedding myself into so many different things. At the same time, I really truly loved everything that I was doing, but I felt like the at the level in which I was doing it was probably influenced by my survival mechanism at the time. And I wasn't, I still remember being a single child, or at least perceivably a single child, until around 6 years old, and then being told I had like in one shot pretty much like a sister here. Oh, all of a sudden I have another sister I've never met before. And then, my mom is having another kid. And then next thing you know, I have another brother and then 2 more kids. And it's like, oh my gosh, where are all these siblings coming from? And so that stressed me out because I had a lot of pressure of like, I had a lot of responsibility to them and being the only thing that they could connect with on that level because we were siblings. And so I think the survival mechanism went to acts of regression, feeling like I couldn't speak my mind, just having to be this adult at a young age, and therefore not being able to speak my mind at the moment as a child, wanting help or needing some sort of,
because you were the big brother, you know, like everybody. And that actually, I'm so glad you brought this up, because I had that revelation like recently with my sister. So I only have one sibling, but I realized most of my life I was given the instruction, you are a big brother, you have to look out for your little sister. And that is not enough instruction for me to do much. There's too much room for interpretation there. And I wonder if this is true for you too. If that was given to you, those instructions, those agreements were given to you, how much of that agreement wasn't yours? And with those agreements, and this is just me personally, it separated me more from my sister, because I was like, I need to protect you. And protection for me was like, I don't expose, them to I don't expose her to my vulnerable emotional side, my volatile emotional side. I try not to like share my, experiences with emotions or open up emotionally with my sister, because that in turn would not be protecting her. So when you're saying this bottling up, you know what I mean? Like, and shutting down and being like suffering in silence, as most men do. I can't help but think that was like an agreement that you made based on the incomplete instruction or programming that like your parents gave you. Does that sound accurate at all, or am I just, you know?
So there were things, that I noticed when I was a kid. This level of dysfunction that was there, and protecting my siblings was to not get them too deep into the dysfunction, or at least not let them suffer the repercussions of noticing those dysfunctions.
Yeah.
And so I would throw myself into trouble, almost to be the one that takes the most trouble out of everything, so that no one else gets into trouble for things, or like,
getting the
it's
attention
really
on
interesting
you.
you're talking about it, because when I'm actually thinking about it, I'm actually like thinking about the response to that. That is the truth behind that. Like, that it really is, like, I think that's why I would do things that were out of pocket. I did a lot of like troublesome things, or not a lot, but I've done troublesome things when I was a kid as a response to, look, I really need help. This is too much.
Yeah.
Can someone help me? And I thought, because, I spent a lot of time watching TV, so I had this interpretation of what family was supposed to be like, and I brought that to my siblings. But then when these dysfunctions would happen, I would crash, and I'm like, I don't know what to do. So I would do these like bad things to just keep the trouble away from them and onto me, and I would be the focus of that, what would be perceived later on in life as, this kid's troubled, he's just like his dad, he's whatever. Sure. And that was the other thing too, we didn't have our dad around, so I took the responsibility of being everything that he wasn't when he wasn't in the picture. And
that's
I
another,
felt
like
that was the only way to like, it was almost redemption. I was almost paying for, because I was so much like him. Even as a child, everyone said, oh my God, you look so much like him. I got older, my voice changed. They said, oh my God, you sound so much like him. I would do these things that were instinctive, and, oh, you're so much like him. And anything I do bad became, oh, he's turning into him.
Okay.
So it was
so external
struggle.
Judgments and agreements that were like given to you, and you like adopted them, and then kind of like reciprocated what they expected of you.
Yeah.
Wow.
While also trying to like decipher what it means to be me.
Right.
And also take the responsibility away, like take away the dysfunction away from what we were living in.
So would you say that, I mean, you're and I don't mean to sound poorly, I'm just trying to get this out, like word it right. So your inability to connect with yourself and the people around you based on like the circumstances you were given and all these agreements and judgments and gossip that people were giving to you, your way of reconnecting with people, yourself, your family, was through art.
Yeah. That was the only thing I had to save me. Literally, it was the only thing. Yeah,
so you went hard in the paint.
Embed myself. Yeah, like I literally worked out all of my emotional, everything about my emotional capacity was through art, because I couldn't rely on anyone that was older than me to give me the proper guidance or answers or anything, because everyone put so much responsibility on me and then just left it on me. Like, you would expect the parents and the older ones to know what they're doing, but as you get older, you start realizing they actually probably had no idea what they were doing, and I can't blame them.
I like imagine like 2021, you have 10 kids you got to take care of. Like,
yeah,
like no fucking way you know what you're doing. There's no way. Like you are making it up as you go. And you're doing your best for sure, 100%. You're doing as best as you can in those circumstances, but to act like you know what you're doing is just like wishful thinking at the best.
Yeah. I definitely have to give it to my grandmother, who was definitely the one who took on the most responsibility for that. My grandmother, my grandfather, most of my grandmother.
Yeah.
She took the responsibility of housing a lot of us at once. If it was just visitations, or like, I spent a lot of time at my grandmother's house, which is my father's mom.
Yeah.
And yeah, I spent a lot of time there. I always wanted to spend time there. There was a point where I was like living there.
Yeah.
There had been points where I was there for like long periods of time, just to, get away from my mother. That was a whole, other struggle that I was dealing with as well.
It was
And,
paradise in a stressful environment, like
Yeah.
it was
Yeah.
the same. I had a very
both
similar.
of them were,
Yeah, I had a very similar thing too. It wasn't my grandmother; it was my grandfather, who was like the most loving Greek man I've ever met in my entire life. Like he would take me out to the garden and like really care for me and give me the attention I needed. And like in a house full of yelling and like stress, it was pure bliss. So I could only imagine what that was like for you, going in from a house that, like, we were talking about, this disjointed, disconnected, like stressful scenario where you've got people like telling you to be a big brother and like all these external factors happening, and then you're all in a place where your grandmother can just care for you and like let you exist without trying to tell you what you need to do, who you are. That's beautiful. That's a beautiful thing to have in that. So can you share, like, I'd imagine that there was a moment where you just realized that that art, like, something clicked. And what do you have, like a specific moment? Was it a string of moments? Like, what changed your mindset and got you pursuing the path of, like, I want to say truth, because that's what music was for you. It was like truth in a space where everything was really just like not yours. Art was yours. The emotional outpouring, going through that was like your truth, you being able to connect, you being able to like pour yourself into something that was you for the very first time. What was there a moment for that? What was that moment?
I'm going to say that aside of the moment where I decided that I was going to test the theory of, what I would then later call creative alchemy at age 8. So that for me was one moment where, my sister said, you need to you really should pay attention to what it is that you're doing, because you don't realize that what you're doing is a very rare thing that most people cannot do at your age. So I really started paying attention to each component of the arts that I was already doing, and then going, well, how is this tied to everything else? If someone were to ask me, if this doesn't work out for you, if acting doesn't work out for you, what will you do? And then I would always have the answer. I'm always going to be trapped in the arts. No matter where you put me, I will always find my way back. And that's what made me start focusing on the other components trickling down from acting. Sorry, so script writing. I've always been a writer, so that was always a thing that I was going to do. But then acting was another component. Music was another thing. When I was in high school and went through the stages of, each year, getting to the last year, that became another thing. I was already creating a series of multiverses for this, this storyline that I had, and I already wrote it since I was in grade 7. And like, it was expanding and people were paying attention to that. And I was like, you know what? It's so weird because everyone likes my artwork. And that's the latest thing that I started to do. It wasn't something that I was doing since I was younger. I only started to really go into it when I was in high school. And I'm like, people really like what I'm doing here, and yet they have no idea what I'm actually going to do. So I'm like, this is a moment, because I was like, I'm going to let people, at least for now, think that the only thing that I can do is illustration, because I'm not ready for them to know what I can do outside of that yet. And I kept developing it. I'd be at home and people would think I was just doing art, but I'm like, no, I'm in the house singing, I'm there writing, I'm there plotting and planning, I'm there like, going like 10, 20 years into the future saying this is what I know I'm gonna, at this point I'm gonna do this and that, and I'm just as meticulous as hell. And I knew that at the end of the day, music was one of those things that was gonna be surfacing, so I had to prepare.
Okay.
And I just kept writing and writing, and so that moment, yeah, I would say definitely right after high school when people start to really pay attention to my artwork and how early at the stage I was in that, realizing that I had a skill for absorbing pretty much anything that was around me, and I really went in as far as possible with everything else.
That's awesome. Yeah. Okay. So is this where like the persona, because you weren't StrikeBoogie the whole time. This is where Darkchild X2K, was that like manifested in high school?
That was manifested in high school, based on a character that I created called Darkchild.
Okay.
And I said, you know, if I'm gonna tie a name to anything, I'm gonna tie it to a character that I've created, so that people will always have a reminder of the character, even though they've never seen the character before. So I said, okay, I'm gonna call myself Darkchild, and then add X2K as like the time period.
This is
kind of give it that era.
Just to give everybody some perspective too, like and for everybody who doesn't like understand what SEO is, Boogie's been doing SEO before SEO was even a fucking thing. That shit's crazy. Like Darkchild X2K, like if you were to put that into Google, I guarantee you'd be able to. I'm gonna do it right now.
You can. It actually was the only thing you could find is anything. Darkchild X2K is. I literally rated the internet like 2006. I went.
Jesus Christ, dude! Look at this shit. This is crazy.
SEO.
Yeah, here. Everybody, you need to. I'm just gonna put the Google search into the chat if you guys want to check it out later.
Okay.
Like this is like when you're talking about like doing SEO before you even understood what SEO was a thing. You're just like, when you were talking about like, you know, I mean, it's one thing to be like, yeah, I want to do this in the future. I want to do this in the future. But to be like cognizant of the fact that, you know, when you put this persona, this character into place, you're like, okay, it's not just me. It's tied to a character I created and like a universe I created. And literally I just popped into Google. The first thing that comes up obviously is your deviant art. There's Pinterest, zerochan.net, Reddit, Reddit post after Reddit post, anime fan addict on Tumblr, redbubble.com. Like there's just like so much on here just from that alone. So that's how forward thinking you were at the time. Like that's not even just like you trying to do it in a way that you're like, oh, the internet's here, you know, like I want people to be able to find me. You literally just thought about it in a sense of like, how can I tie this back to me in some way? And so how was discovering the internet and being a visual artist? Because like that to me, that has been the trippiest fucking thing. Honestly, like as a artist and person doing creative work in general, because when I was going to art school, doing 3D work and like 3D animation, I didn't even have a computer that could run that shit. So I would do all the keyframes on a separate computer in a computer lab, download it onto a hard drive, which we didn't have USB 3.0 now, or like the speeds we have now. So it took like 45 minutes to copy the whole fucking file onto a thing. And then I would go to a completely different computer lab and render. And that took anywhere, depending on how long. If it was like, let's say, a minute and a half animation, it was probably like an hour and a half to 2.5 hours of like rendering the video. Then you copy it again back onto the USB drive. And then you bring it into class and present. There was no fucking cloud. There was no workflow that was consistent. I had to restart, you know, I had to remake shortcuts and like all that other shit that was like with these files. There was no universal workflow. It was fucking terrible. Okay. So you doing digital art, like, were you scanning things in? Like it was all drawing. So you had to start with like analog, right? So what was your first venture into illustration? What did that look like?
Oh boy. Oh god.
Dude, you can hear the fucking stress.
Grade 12 was when I really got into the internet, because we had to do certain assignments that was during ICQ days and like Yahoo groups and all that other stuff. So I was doing all sorts of like it was like I remember just struggling. I'm like, what's BRB and what's you know, just I didn't understand.
What is this fucking language, dude? Yeah.
And because I would spend so much time at the library when everyone thought I was like out clubbing and partying and stuff, I would always be at the library just working on the computer, doing research on the computer, and just like I just spent so much time on it because I
Oh, we
to
froze a little
realize
bit.
like communication with
Boogie,
people
hold on.
on this such a huge thing. On top of that, GeoCities was my life. So like I would spend so much time.
One
Something
second.
happened.
Yeah, there was. It looks like we're running into. Is it a connection issue on my end? Hold on.
Well, you're good so far. I think you just came back.
Okay, it's my bit rate's okay. I think we ran into a little bit of connection issue on your end. So it cut out a little bit and froze when you started talking about your timing at the library. So start from there again.
Okay.
Yeah, you're totally fine.
Okay, cool. The time I would spend at the library I would say was the most detrimental in me like really picking up like speed on like how to utilize the internet a little bit, because I spent a lot of time on GeoCities, and then I noticed other people had their GeoCities accounts and like websites and guest books and stuff, discover different artists and whatnot. So for me, part of it was like, okay, understanding scanners. Scanners were at the library, so then using those. And I was just picking up on coloring. I just got myself a copy of Photoshop 5,
Lord.
I think it was, or 5.5.
When you say that, my brain's like,
and Windows ME became a thing, and that was like atrocious. And
oh my god,
I'm really dating myself here.
Hey,
so
you're okay.
But yeah, and then a lot of time spent at school. After school, I'd be there like tucked away in one of the classrooms until 8 at night when the janitor was still mopping the floors inside the school and had no idea that there was one student just sitting there in there. And I was really trying to like get my grasp around the internet and using it and scanning things, trying to figure out how to color, trying to figure out how people are coloring using Photoshop and all those things. Little tutorials here and there. Yeah, I literally like for 2.5 years, I was doing nothing but that. And I really got a hold of what that was and like how to use technology in a really good way.
During that time too, like it was very unique in the sense that like, engaging with strangers on the internet was community based too. So were all those tutorials and like, photos, because YouTube wasn't around, so like how did you even like figure, like, was there tutorials built into Photoshop, or was there like an online community or like website forum that like you frequented that gave you that opportunity? And I'm assuming that's where like DeviantArt eventually came in, right? But like, what was it like in the pre-DeviantArt days for you?
Okay, so a couple things. So there were two components that really played a part in this. So one of them was that there was a company called Dreamwave Productions at that time that existed that used to do a whole bunch of like the later part of Dreamwave did the Transformer comic books and all that stuff before they went to IDW. They did the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles stuff. They had some Capcom licenses and stuff. They even tried to acquire Street Fighter. But before that, they were doing their own original stuff. And I stumbled onto them through someone through high school that mentioned a name. I started to do research on that person and then found that there was another person that lived down the street from me. I contacted them at random. I just had this bold idea. Let me just call them. Their phone number's there and whatever.
Yeah.
I called them. We met up. His name is Arnold Sang, and he's done a lot of really, really good stuff over the years. And he introduced me to some of the techniques that he was doing at that time that were at that moment was ahead of his time. Like a lot of people were trying to like borrow from his coloring style. He would almost be one of those people, one of the first people to really introduce painting with Japanese animation style.
Okay.
And so him, and then the whole GeoCities thing. When I was on GeoCities making my own website, I would look up other people's GeoCities websites to see how they were building theirs, find other artists that had like guest books, and then I would stumble on their work. And then eventually I would find other artists that had like full tutorials on how to color cell shade, how to color using some painting or whatever. And I'd be like, oh, okay. So not only am I learning about how they're putting their website together, but I'm learning that they're putting their expertise out there. And I remember when they converged, how they converged was that Arnold was like, what I'm doing right now took me years to get here. So just expect that it's going to take you years to really understand how to color. And I'm like, see, I already have an understanding of my learning capacity. I bet you I can learn it faster. And in 6 months, I learned how to do cell shading, coloring at a level that was deemed professional, to the point where when I would present my artwork, people were just like, are you like how long have you been doing this for? And it's like, I've been doing this only for like a short period of time, and people were really impressed. Like, we really, yeah, that convergence really was like really where it ended up. Like, he told me that comment. I already had this little tutorial. I was like, I'm gonna absorb a little bit of this and then just self-learn. And then that's what happened. And I was using a broken ass computer trying to do all this stuff. And yeah, man, from that point I had a collective, set of people that I met through the internet, as well as like events, like conventioning. They were teaching me how to do inking. Like, everyone was pretty much like, yeah, we were all going back and forth. Just like, yeah, the learning capacity ended up being much bigger.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you had it. That's really beautiful though, because like it's very easy to get swept up in like in hearing from a fellow artist like your capabilities. You know what I mean? And like being like, okay, well, that's my capability because they're more experienced than me. But like, you were like, fuck no, dude. I've been doing this. I've been doing this my own way for a long time. So that's crazy that you were able to like piece together essentially how you were going to accomplish whatever it was. And I mean, you were obviously fully dedicated, like giving yourself hours and hours, not only practicing the art, but also creating a method in which you were absorbing the information too. Because like, if it's one of those things that you care about, like there's no stopping you. You're going to hyper focus on that until you burn out. So you started primarily as a visual artist. So Darkchild X2K was like the manifestation of that. And then that's what people were paying attention to. And then DeviantArt comes along. And that's where like shit hit the fucking fan for you, right? Or what were you doing before DeviantArt? Was there were you doing any comic books or illustration or anything like professionally before DeviantArt?
Yeah, so I had already released my first comic book preview for a series called Mega 18 Genesis that came out in 2003. I had already done the convention circuit, so people had already known who I was at that time. I knew some companies. I knew a bunch of the people there. I was really circulating in that regard. And on top of that, I just got an offer for working in character design for a game. And also trying to apply for college, because I took a break and I was like, I can't go to college right after high school. I need to focus on my thing.
Right.
So that was just before DeviantArt, or before I decided to go on DeviantArt, because I don't know what year it actually came out, but I got an account in 2005 and only started using it at the beginning of 2006.
Okay.
So I had a series of artworks that I had done, but I hadn't really completed. And then when I went to college and we had the college strike, it was 2005, late 2005 or early 2006, the colleges went on strike, and there was like, I think it was like 2 months where we had no school, but I was living on campus or not around campus. And I said, you know what? This is the perfect time for me to like drill and get to the next level of my coloring, of my artwork and whatever. I went in and I started updating DeviantArt. I'm like, you know what? There's a huge community here. Let me just like start putting my artwork up and like let people know what I'm up to. And the first drawing that I did, or the first drawing that got popular on there, was maybe like one of my first 5 posts. It was the Gara of the Desert picture that I did. And I think to this day, it's like sitting at some ridiculous number for likes and views and people sharing it and all that stuff. So that's really where it started. I had introduced some of the stuff that I had done before DeviantArt. And then from that point, DeviantArt was pretty much my life. Like, I really loved updating that and doing more artwork and then being able to post it there, because that was where I would say that that's the first community that I really got into.
And you mentioned when we talked about DeviantArt, you mentioned that there were people that like followed you from there, Yosh being one of them, right? Was that DeviantArt days or before that?
I think it was after.
After, okay.
Yeah, it was after I pretty much stopped using DeviantArt. He discovered me. Yeah.
And so I feel like, one of the things about, being an artist and exploring and doing the things that you're doing, DeviantArt was like a tool for you to further connect your artwork to people, right?
Absolutely.
So you had people like seeing the artwork, connecting with it, and then you were able to like speak to them and really like, connect with individuals in a way that you weren't able to do before. And so when did you decide you were going to move away from that? Like, when did it stop being a fulfilling experience for you, where you were like, okay, I got what I needed from this, it's time to move on to the next thing?
Actually, it wasn't really me moving on from DeviantArt until I decided to switch into being a generalist, which was 2012. Okay. Like, there was no real definitive reason for me to leave, but I had personal life things going on that were just occupying so much of my time at that time that when I tried to go back, it felt like I lost a connection somehow.
Okay.
That it took too long or whatever, and I would try to post things and it just didn't feel the same. I felt like I had to consistently be on there in order for me to like really like
exist.
Keep the attention and exist. And there were so many other artists and they were evolving, and I was like, I don't know if I feel like I belong here anymore.
So it was like you felt like you had plateaued, like the experience in which you were participating and like doing things, you weren't growing or learning or getting anything from it in the same way you were when you first started. So that was your like, okay, this feeling is me telling, like, this feeling means I need to figure something else out.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I didn't know what that was because like I said, that was a community that the first community that I experienced really like meeting people, and like you said too, like I've met people on there that I talk to today, and it's like 15 years now, and like we're connected and we're close, and so for me that was an odd situation to be in, just to like not be able to use that platform really as much as I would like, and trying to find another community, because already, like we've discussed before, joining communities is not a thing that we connect to easily. We always feel kind of like disconnected from it, no matter how much we try to like almost impose ourselves, or at least it feels like we're imposing ourselves into a community or group that doesn't want us really to be there, or doesn't work for us. And that's how I felt ever since DeviantArt. I never really felt like there was a group that I could really connect with in that way. So I kind of left DeviantArt alone. I was like, okay, I'll just leave it as an archive. I almost wanted to shut it down, change name, whatever. But I was like, you know what? People need to see my history there. But I was like, if I'm going to do this over again, I need to do this the way that I was going to do it. I think this is the time where I now need to be StrikeBoogie.
Okay.
And that's where that line, like pretty much
the new era
just said stuff. Yeah, I needed to create a new era altogether.
Yeah. So how did you come up with the name StrikeBoogie?
Strike came about in 2004. I was just creating a logo and a name, and I was just like, names come to me super easy. I was just like, okay, if I'm going to call myself as a musician, I want to be Strike. But it started off as J Strike. So I created a J Strike logo that was in the vein of Bad Boy Entertainment. And I was like, I'm leaving it in this book. I know that it's going to come at one point because I was already building toward it, but no one knew. So I was like, when it comes, it'll come. And that's the name I'm choosing, and that's the logo I'm choosing. The logo that I currently have as StrikeBoogie is a derivative, the exact derivative of J Strike. I just took out the J out of the logo, added Boogie at the bottom, and that's how it went from J Strike to StrikeBoogie. J Strike lasted for about 3 years.
Okay.
About 3 years before I really was like, I need to drop the J and I want a last name for the.
So I think that 3-year period is actually a really important part. So like that 3-year period of J Strike, was that
Mhm.
you experimenting and trying to figure out exactly what kind of musical artist you were trying to be, or would you say that you kind of had like the direction, but the persona like was not as connected? Because I feel like when you get to StrikeBoogie, like it's almost like the pieces lock into place. Whereas like J Strike is like, okay, I'm trying to figure out how this shit fits together, and it's like kind of there, but I don't know what the fuck's happening. You know?
I just wanted to. J Strike was an experiment and a moment of truth. So
Okay.
I used that moment to say, okay, I'm ready to do music. I'm ready to explore that, and I'm ready to put that to the public as opposed to then not telling people that I do music. I'm ready to actually show people what I can do. So for now, I'll be J Strike. For now, I'm going to release these songs that no one knew I could ever do, and then collab with as many people as I possibly can, really connect, pretty much put myself out there without any, like, unapologetically, like putting out what I can do regardless of at what capacity I could do it. So the first song that I ended up releasing was after a mini nervous breakdown that I had, and I was like, I can't do this through art. I can't do this through any other medium other than through music. So I released a song called Yesterday, and that song within 3 days got like a 1,000 some or more like downloads and likes and whatever. No one even knew that I could do or anyone who didn't know me long enough didn't know I could do music, but the people who knew me long enough, knowing me as a singer, were like, he's rapping. What where did that come from? And so I spent most of J Strike is rapping and not singing. And then but it was a lot of mixtape stuff. It was a lot of, beats from other producers or like rapping on top of instrumentals that I grew up on that I said, oh, I'm going to rap on this and whatever. And then just like at some point, like near the end of that whole J Strike thing, I was like, I'm not connecting with this anymore. I don't want to perform it. I don't want to be seen doing any of these songs. I know I can produce, but I didn't have the technology, the means to make things happen the way that I do now.
Yeah.
It just did not feel right to me anymore. And it was like, okay, I'm stepping away from music because I need to undo J Strike and get into StrikeBoogie. And I took a substantial break, actually. Like, I want to say like 6 years.
6 years
And I
from
was
making
still-
music?
From making music publicly, yeah.
Oh, okay, publicly. You were still working on stuff, but it was just like, okay,
Yeah.
I'm not
But I'm not
publishing
as an
anything.
artist. Yeah, as an
Got it.
artist, I'm not publishing anything. I need to figure out where I belong. Music was also changing. Like it started turning into the whole trap thing, and like just what I understood about what R&B and hip hop is and whatever. That was changing within like the last like 11 years.
Yeah.
Completely transforming, and I wasn't really getting it. So I was afraid that maybe I was too late. But I was like, I know how to absorb this information. I know how to absorb what I do like from what I'm hearing. And so I just need to sit with that. In the meantime, I will create music that I know I want to make. Soundtrack music specifically. I was working in soundtrack production for animation films and for indie films. And I was also still writing, still putting music together, still putting projects together, and still working with the one producer that I did like putting my voice on, which was Blue Jones. And so but yeah, in terms of music, I just took a break. With artwork, I was still kind of doing things here and there, but even that was a little bit of a struggle too, because I was starting to not like enjoy doing artwork in the way that I did before for people. And yeah, it was a journey, but I did finally get to being StrikeBoogie.
So how did you come back? What was the moment where you felt like you were ready?
when I decided that the way that I want to come back was through storytelling. It went right back. It's like, remember how you started, and I, as a writer, as someone who likes to create themes for things, I was like, you know what, my discography, if I'm gonna listen to other people's discographies of like people who influenced me, start like that. I want to have original music from the jump. I kept producing in the background. I was producing music all the time, and I was like, you know what, again, if I'm going to start introducing people to where it always began with people need to know. So I'm going to release a piano album, because piano was the first thing that got me into music. It was the first thing where I realized I have synesthesia, you know?
Synesthesia?
So
meaning, what kind of synesthesia do you have?
It's like hearing a language that you didn't know you understood. For whatever reason, it hits you differently. Like when I touch the piano, I like get very, very emotional. Like I'm crying, because it's almost like I'm hearing someone talk to me in a way that I've never been spoken to before. Like that deep, deep, deep connection, that thing that I just like, I've been yearning for my entire life, that connection that I don't really feel from many people in this life. I get it through piano, through playing it. It's like every key is a language, it's a word, it's a description, it's a painting, it's everything that I ever want to do at once.
So when you hear it, is it like emotionally, you say it's emotionally stimulating, but like what's going on in your brain? Like visually, how do you interpret it? Because synesthesia, from what I understand, right, is like you can hear or see things and they're interpreted differently by your brain. So
yeah,
is it an emotional interpretation specifically, or is there like a visual aspect to it too?
There is a visual aspect to it. There's a taste to it. There's a certain
a taste. Interesting.
Texture, like a texture almost. Like even when people are talking to me, I can feel texture. Like I know when something's being like said in an aggression, like when something's coarse, or if something has like a sweetness to it, or if it has like a whatever. But with piano, it's like everything at once. It's like very overstimulating in that sense. Like
in a beautiful way.
Everything. Yeah, in a very beautiful way, which is why I haven't been able to perform piano. Like so, I want to, but it's just I don't know how to really.
I don't know if you'd be
separate myself without being like an emotional wreck on stage.
Yeah. I mean, that in itself would be like, I think, a very intimate thing. I don't know if like doing it on stage, and this is just a thought, but I don't know if you saw, did you see Bo Burnham's Inside, the special?
No.
So Bo Burnham is he was a comedian, and he left comedy like 5-6 years ago entirely. He's a musician, a musical comedy artist. He was one of the first like YouTube children, like the dudes that like just blew up overnight, millions of views, that sort of thing. And he stepped away from it to do movies and screenplays. He made a movie called 8th Grade, which was like the personification of being in 8th grade. I don't know how to explain it any other way than that. So he leaves comedy for 5 years, and he comes back and he does this special called Inside. It's about being, inside during the pandemic and what it did on his mental health. And there's all this music and stuff that he created. But it's an extremely intimate special. It's not a comedy special. It's just like, this is the curated experience that like I poured all of my attention and time into, and I literally obsessed over every detail. And here is the most nutrient dense thing I can give you. And so he gives pieces of himself through this art. And that's what I'm thinking about. Like when you're saying, I don't know if I could do this on stage. I don't think that honestly would be like as beneficial as being able to just have the honesty, the conversation between you and the piano and a recording, and just letting that be. Because I think a lot of people get, especially as an artist, right, there's a certain perfectionism that comes with like what you want to do and how you want to show things, I think like in that perfection, striving for that perfection, which is impossible, you'll never be perfect, but striving for that, you also could lose some of the authenticity and the honesty that comes with just showing. And
exactly.
And when you're talking about, getting in touch with, getting rid of J Strike and reassessing yourself and coming back as StrikeBoogie, I can't help but think like, during your 3 years as J Strike, you were re-experiencing what it was like to be an artist who, before you became an artist, you had all these people giving you perspective and opinion. Now with the internet introduced, right? And so you have the illustrator opinions and gossip and like words coming at you, and so you're starting to question your foundation and what that means. And so you're swimming essentially for so long, and then you're swimming as J Strike for 3 years, and you finally pick your head up and you're like, what the fuck am I doing? Where am I?
There was a level of shame that I felt with some directions that I'd taken as J Strike. I don't connect with that at all, because like while I was really exploring my capacity with what I was doing, I felt like certain things that I had done was just like I just wasn't feeling it. Like
you weren't connected to it.
I just wasn't connected to it, and I think that part of the toxicity of hip hop sort of surfaced through some of the stuff that I was doing when I didn't really want that to be the case. Can you elaborate
more on that? Like, because I'm not familiar with the world of hip hop at all as you can imagine, cis white man. Like, it was one of those things where like I definitely listen to hip hop and I enjoy artists and stuff, but like I don't have any experience, and I'm sure a lot of the people who are watching this too, like they don't have much experience in hip hop and like what that means. And I mean, from what I like outside looking in, I'd imagine that there's a lot of like judgment based on emotional vulnerability and like wanting to be open and honest about like your mental health or feelings of love or anything that would be vulnerable. Because, life in hip hop culture is genuinely come from very hard life. Right. So like,
and I mean, like, so from my understanding, what I understand about hip hop from how I grew up with it, and I'll try to keep this part short, is like, I grew up on hip hop when it was about conscious rap, when it was talking about issues that we need to address in order to make change, positive change at all times. This is like the Queen Latifah era. This was the Tribe Called Quest era. This was like Del the Funky Homo Sapien. This was Big Daddy Kane, Heavy D, like Rakim and Eric B. and Rakim, Public Enemy. Those were the artists that were trying to incite change, right? They wanted things to change for the better. They needed people to understand that there's oppression in the Black community. These are the things that need to change. This is how we can change. Awareness, all these things. Gangster hip hop comes into play because, for once we're able to talk about the struggle of what's going on in communities, in deep communities that work against us. We're trying to get out. We're more aggressive. We're more like putting ourselves out there, but then we're talking about then it becoming commercial, and then talking about the money aspect, and talking about how we are out of it, but we're still like bringing the street element to it. And then when I was doing hip hop in 2010 to 2013, these are so many people who have been influenced by hip hop who are not necessarily Black artists from the hood or whatever. All these people making music, they're still talking about struggle and whatever, but it's convoluted. They don't necessarily know the history, or they don't necessarily appreciate the things that you want to talk about that are conscious anymore, because that's not really a thing anymore. I used to hear so much about that. I would talk about things that are conscious. It's like, oh, I'm not really into conscious rap. It's like, what? Like, and it's just like the interest of people listening to your music at a time where putting your music online, people would hear your stuff, and it's like people don't want to hear conscious rap. But yesterday was the first song I dropped, and it was conscious rap. I was talking about real shit, and not to say I wasn't ever really talking about real shit. It's just that when I started to get a little bit more aggressive with the things that I was writing and the things that I was creating, it was bringing every aspect of pain that came from hip hop and what we would address. And then it started to bring in all the sporting rap into that. And then it started to bring in the negative aspects of, like, you know, you're saying things that are aggressive and like you wouldn't necessarily be saying all the time or whatever. And just being, I started to become what I felt was the things that I didn't necessarily want to embody in hip hop. Those are not the things that I grew up on specifically. Even though I was good at doing them, they were not the things I wanted to keep putting forward. And I felt like, you know, it's influence too, right? You work with certain people, they love your stuff. They're like, oh my God, I want you to, like, you know, I've had people ask me to write stuff for them for battle rap, and I'm like, but then I'm talking about shit that, like, I'm talking about someone. In battle rap, you're going at someone, right? Like, you're really doing that, and it's like, you know, I don't know if I want to do that. I don't know if I want to be responsible for that, you know, putting that out there. And that's why I started to really not like what I was doing in rap. Like, I love rap, and I feel like I'm still really good at it. I just don't want to be putting out the wrong kind of music. And when I listen back to some of my old stuff, even though I put a catalog out there, I did put it on SoundCloud exclusively. It's called Changing the House of Strike. Showcases some of the better stuff of that, but I don't like listening to it because as much as people need to know my musical history and stuff, I don't like the general making of that music because it's heavy. Okay. It's heavy in a way that I can't digest anymore.
Would it be all right if I ask some more questions related to that?
Yeah, absolutely. Go for it.
Yeah. So, like, this is something that I feel like, I don't know. When you're talking about this, it resonates with me in a way where, for me, one of my strongest emotions, in the emotional deck of cards that I have, the strongest card that I have is anger and aggression.
Yeah.
And that card is, like, when I say powerful, like, it hurts me to draw. Mm-hmm. You know, like, it's one of those cards. Is that similar to what you're talking about? Like, it's just like the aggression, you can very easily tap into that, but when you do it, it hurts yourself.
Oh yeah, for sure. Like, okay. I'm very Bruce Banner Hulk. Like, I always say, like, inside I'm probably always angry to some degree. Yeah. And part of the change that I made from J Strike to StrikeBoogie was that I did a 1.5-year meditation during the time that I decided to stop doing music and pretty much everything creative. I just sort of stopped, and I took a 1.5 years to go through meditation. And the reason why I have my tattoos that I have now are all based on my meditations. And J Strike definitely carried a lot of. I still held back. Yeah. Because I'm telling you right now, if I had actually been in a situation where someone challenged me, dissed me or whatever, and I was like, I'm bringing my anger to the table, I would rip someone apart doing that. But then me listening back to that, knowing I put that out into the universe, would fuck me up. I don't want to be doing that.
Do you think that's part of, like, you know how you're talking about the piano connection and like how that, you know, emotionally wrecks you? So because you have synesthesia, do you think that is a huge reason related to that?
Yeah, because my wordplay and like the way that I decide to say things or like the way it connects is all a part of that synesthesia. I know I'm tapping into something that I know I'm feeling it. I would not like perform something if I wasn't feeling it.
Yeah.
Okay. It stops, right? So if I know I'm doing it and I'm doing it with that intent, it's gonna wreck me because I'm gonna listen to it. I'm gonna be like, oh my God, if I'm high or something, or like, you know, it's any situation where I'm tapping into some sort of avatar state and I go and I listen back to that, I'm going to be. I know what I'm going to experience, and it's a lot of that will be regret. Okay. I will regret having done that. And
Okay.
I just don't want that. I didn't want that anymore. I didn't want to feel like I was putting something out there and just regretting what I was putting out.
Okay.
And I felt like a lot of what J Strike was me like not being comfortable enough to really I just wasn't connecting, and that was a huge regret.
Okay. And I guess this comes back to it, back to another question. Because anger for me, again, that card that is very, very hot card that can hurt me, but nonetheless is a very powerful card. It makes me question. It makes me come up with a question related to like, how do you express anger, or do you try to refrain from it? And for me personally, I, again, like in a very similar way, when that card is drawn, it can fuck people up. Like I know how to. It's also my voice. Like you can hear it in my voice when I talk about it. When I say when I swear, or if somebody gets my attention and I really want to rip into them and I'm upset about it. Like my voice in particular, it carries that tenor. And I know you can hear it when I'm speaking on it. Even just reflecting on it, I can feel my vocal tone going into that space, like so easily. Just like that, that mental pathway, that groove is there forever, and it's never going away. Yeah. And so, what healthy ways are you able to express your anger? Be it artistically or just like, whatever route you go to, physicality. Like for me, working out has been, especially over the past pandemic, and, during the whole Black Lives Matter movement too. And like all these videos of like police brutality and, violence being showcased on a scale that we haven't seen before, and our politicians being completely incompetent. Like in an era where all of this shit is abundant, that card was hurting me because I wasn't using it. It was searing and burning the other emotions that were in place. Like I couldn't figure out what to do with it. And so, using my voice was one way of doing it, but like for me, working out and just physically doing something, physically being able to move something was like where that routed for me. How do you express your anger? How do you use that emotional card without it, overwhelming you?
I think that a few things come into play, but I'll say right now that will always be a work in progress.
Okay.
Being able to make music where I'm channeling anger without stepping out too much into like this bizarro Professor Xavier thing, You've seen the Hulk, he has an outer body experience and he just goes around like going and getting rid of everybody and whatever. Like I feel like part of it is just understanding how to properly write music, and I feel like I've always had that ability to write how I feel. Yeah. It's just about writing it in a way that doesn't take me deep end. And I feel like generally my whole rule is to always write universally, write so that everyone can understand, and write so that nothing is about anyone specifically.
Yeah.
Just about the energies of it, carry the energy. If you're writing about the energy, get lost in the energy, but don't get lost in specifics.
Got it.
And
that
to me is so important. You need, as an artist, you have to be like the same way that I draw something and I put all my anger into it is not to draw someone. I'm drawing the thing that's making me. I'm like bringing all that negative energy into it without making it personal.
So it's the feeling, non-personal feeling that gets represented and used in the outlet. I would love to like. Are there? Is there any songs that you've made that are in that vein, or is that like, again, you said it's a work in progress, so I wouldn't expect you to have something readily available, but I feel like with anger, and this is where I feel like this is what I love about these conversations, is because like oftentimes it's very much something that we consider a problem. You know what I mean? Like anger and aggression, especially as a man, especially as a black man, just in general, like that's something that it has a stereotype. And so like the entire world has this negative connotation when it's really just like an angry person. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But for whatever reason, color's involved. So like for you expressing that, I wonder, I mean, I would imagine that there's more work that has to be done than like me as a white man. You know what I mean? Like that's for me, I can easily be like, yeah, I know what that card is. I know how to express it in a way that I'm still doing it. It's still a work in progress, but like what it sounds like for what you're telling me is that you had a taste of that as J Strike, and then you were like, this card can never come out again. And then what you just explained was, you know, the evolution of becoming StrikeBoogie and the meditation practices. You were like, this card is very powerful. I can use this card, but it's not personal and it can't be directed towards anybody.
Yeah. Which I mean, I never really did that to begin with.
Sure.
It just felt like I could get very close to that. Like I feel like I was like,
that's anger.
If I had just kept going in that direction that I was going, I would have eventually done that. That's where I would have regretted it.
Yes.
You know, that's why I pulled back.
Yeah, I think that's an important like threshold to understand. I think like with any emotion, but specifically anger, the threshold is when it becomes personal.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
Whether it's for
I feel like people do that. People don't know how to not make things personal. I know that there's a lot of people who don't
yes, but
that.
that's not for you to take personally if they do. And that's the hardest part. You know what I mean? Because like those agreements and the things that we've been dealing with and you've been dealing with your entire life that you've explained, like these external, you know, feedback, the external feedback you're getting, the conversations people are trying to like have with you and the perspective they're forcing or agreements they're forcing on you, gossip that you're forcing on you, opinions they're forcing onto you. Like that's all on them.
Oh, for sure.
So I guess this leads us into the next question here. Like StrikeBoogie came into existence as a result of not abandoning, but like recognizing the path you were on and realizing how like the music you were making, the art you were making conflicted with who you are as a person. And so you reassessed everything you meditated for an entire year, 6 years stepped away from music, like publishing stuff publicly, and you decided to re-enter. And so what was like, I'd have to imagine that there was like a moment during that time period where you're like, okay, it's time for me to re-enter. What was that moment? And can you elaborate a little bit about what you were doing in that 6 years that wasn't music related, that was still allowing you to be, you know, successful, like artwork, that sort of thing, if you can?
Like piano, things like instrumentation, orchestration, soundtracks, those things I've always been to the heart as well. I feel like those things can be played and I can exuberate all of my emotions without ever seeing anything. And I felt like I could just do that no matter what. So in those 6 years, while I wasn't actually doing vocal records, I was still producing music. I was really getting into my production bag. So like for me, like production was a huge thing. At all times, I wanted to be able to just make my music as making it and really discover what I would rap on or what I would sing on or what those things. I spent a lot of time doing that and making production for other people. That just gave me so much energy to just keep going and keep making music and really just get comfortable with doing my own thing. In the midst of that, I've had moments where I experienced loss. I had experienced some trials and tribulations. So I was like, you know what? I would sit there and think, oh, I'm going to make a full production or whatever. And I would just sit there and just play the piano one shot, record it. And these pieces that I had done were over the course of maybe 5 years. Sorry. The course of 4 years.
Okay.
From 2014 to 2018. The last song I made was at the very end of 2018. And then that's when I decided, you know what? No one's heard anything from me yet, but I have 5 piano tracks. I should definitely just put out this piano album. I'll just put out a piano album. because that is going to be the most honest thing that I ever put out. Because in reality, my discography, if I'm going to talk about where it all starts, it starts with the piano. So I'm going to release a piano album. And then that discography became, now I'm going to tell a story of my actual music history. Like all other artists before me that I've been influenced by have started their beginning. Where is their beginning? They've started here with this like random indie album or whatever, and then went to their second album, did something big, and then, you know, evolved that way. So now I'm almost reversing time for everyone and going, if I had done a full discography from the time that I knew I should have been releasing music, this is where I would have started. And I'm kind of now giving people a taste through my discography of where things should have been in each era of when I was supposed to be making music. So the Missing Key EP was where it began in December 2018. There's 5 songs on there, and that project to me is my therapy. When I feel like I'm lost, when I feel like I really don't know how to like wrap my head around things and I'm distraught and I can't do anything, that album is like what a computer is for recalibrating. You defrag a computer and it gets back to normal. The Missing Key EP is my defrag. I only listen to it when I want to get back to a point of zen. And it has a lot of emotion in it. You can feel the anger, the sadness, the happiness, the joy, the moments of like plateauing, like everything I feel like is there. And you can tell that my experience with synesthesia lies in that album. Like there's a lot of magic in that project.
Very cool. Okay. Okay, so this is we're in the new era of StrikeBoogie. And I mean, how has it been re-entering? So when you re-entered, you came out with that album. That's been your like baseline, get back to baseline album that you can listen to yourself, remind you, you know, why you wanted to get into this and like what you were doing, and create, make yourself as close to what the like most purest form of StrikeBoogie that you wanted to be. And so how are you? You kind of already answered a question I already had. So like, how do we get back to baseline? How do you maintain, you know, the persona of StrikeBoogie? And listening to that music is one thing. How is it being StrikeBoogie in this era of opinion and gossip and social media? Like, how is it like, you know, for me personally, I took a big step away from streaming because I wasn't satisfied with what I was doing. And it wasn't, you know, a 6-year hiatus like you were. It was only a month and a half or so. And a lot of that was like meditation and like reassessing what my agreements were and what weren't mine and like how that was. And I found myself getting lost in my peers and others' expectations of me that I didn't really like, they didn't give me, but like I felt like I agreed to. So like, how do you maintain your head in a space where you're not working just in music anymore still, right? You are still doing like other art and production and all this other stuff. How do you maintain yourself? How do you keep yourself like on the straight and narrow? You're being, you know, you're talented as fuck, dude. you're expressing yourself in more than one facet. And I can't imagine like not being lost in that for me personally. And it, you know, if your answer is I'm not lost, I know what I'm doing, like that's totally okay too.
I feel like I have a mechanism that literally, so like my general mechanism is I feel like I'm okay until I'm not. And when I'm not okay, I might fall into depression or what I might experience is something like depression and sadness. But then that sadness makes me angry, and that anger turns into eureka moments where I create stuff. I feel like no matter what I do at any given moment, I will always end up creating something that is bound to go out into the universe. So it's like literally the arts and entertainment and the creative realm and creative alchemy owns my ass. Like I'm not the one driving. I'm not the one at the driver's seat at all. Not at all. When I'm creating stuff and I'm putting it out there, it's because I literally can't help myself.
Because you've already created the behaviors to do so.
Yeah, exactly. So like literally I can't help it. So
So
that is a part of it. Like, that's a huge part of it, is that, like, I'm not sitting here going, oh, I am planning and plotting and whatever, but when it does come out and when I do decide to release it, I'm left vulnerable. Like, I'm looking back at my music, I look back at anything, and I'm like, what kind of minds, like, what was I haunted, like possessed by something? Like, I really did this? Like, I'm never the same person. Like, I'm multiple people. I would almost say I have like a multiple personality disorder, but like, because there's like a boardroom in my head of like 7 people literally arguing over what's gonna happen and stuff. But things just happen.
Yeah.
In terms of like what StrikeBoogie represents, though, and like what I do control and what, like, when I am in the driver's seat, I really just don't give a fuck about what anyone thinks about what I do, because I'm not doing it with this intention, like an intention of like being famous or whatever. I have no dreams of grandeur. I just have dreams of someone that used to be me being able to connect with someone where I couldn't connect with, where I couldn't find someone like that when I was younger. Being able to have people understand that they can do what I'm doing, that they can do anything at any capacity. It doesn't have to be like, you know, a million things at once. It doesn't have to be that. Just do something that makes you happy, because I am currently happy doing what I'm doing. It doesn't matter if it fails. It doesn't matter what the end result is. I'm happy knowing that I actually did what I wanted to do. And I feel like I have a sense of duty in that regard to keep doing that. Not for myself, for other people to see that there's someone doing it regardless of whatever situation they may be in. I've been in so many different situations. So many different outcomes could have happened from that. I could have fell on the floor. There's so many instances where I could say I probably would have died. I probably wouldn't be here today without having done that. So it's just a matter of just letting the arts and entertainment, let the creative alchemy run and take the driver's seat. And while it's doing that, focus on the things that make me happy as a person. Make sure that whatever it is I'm doing, that I'm happy with the outcome of that. Making sure I understand what's happening around me. And part of the evolution of that is recognize, realize, understand. I've been saying this forever. I swear I heard this from a rapper, and then my brother's telling me he never heard that before. And I'm like, we're not going to Berenstain this whole situation, because like, I feel like I know I heard that from somewhere, but maybe I made it up myself. But recognize, realize, and understand. I feel like StrikeBoogie's at the point of understanding. I understand what is happening. I understand what's going on. Realizing was J Strike and all that in between transition. Recognizing was the beginning of my journey. Recognizing what I could do and how to do that. So it's just me really. StrikeBoogie is just at a point of understanding. I understand where music is, so I understand where to place myself. I understand where I want to be as an artist. So I tried my very hardest to put myself out there like that and not falter. I don't care about like what anyone has to think about what I'm doing, because I don't really think anyone's doing what I'm doing. That's just how I feel. I haven't seen it, and I'm just gonna keep doing it, without an ego, without any of that stuff, because that doesn't interest me at all.
Yeah, it doesn't serve you.
Yeah.
Man. So now we're with the StrikeBoogie era. We're primarily focusing on music. I know we talked a little bit about like why you stepped away from like visual art and doing art, and it was related to like the servitude of others, right? So in this new era of StrikeBoogie, you're primarily making and producing music for other people still, or is it you're solely focusing on your endeavors?
I'm working on my endeavors. It's the same thing. Everything has its like ebb and flow, right? Like,
yeah,
I may be putting something forward, but I'm still working on everything else in the background.
Okay.
So I put music out as the forefront because I've already produced like 7 albums and EPs way ahead of myself, and I'm just getting ready to like kind of solidify that part so that it can just do its own thing while I'm doing other stuff. And that's me being like very straightforward about that. In terms of visual art, what it meant to me back then and what it means to me now is completely different.
Okay.
StrikeBoogie doing visual art is about creating an energy and a vibe that no one has experienced from me, from my art, to like connecting the parts that people love visually to the core element that I've done from the very start. That is the multiverses, that is the storylines, that is the to be comic books, to be animation or live TV, movies, whatever. Those things and how music ties to all these things is very, very crucial, which is why I put music first, because music will tie into all these other things that I'm going to be doing.
Okay.
And so back then when I was doing art, it was to gain experience. You know, I wanted to be able to gain experience with creative, you know, I can't say I'm a character designer if I haven't done creative, you know, character design for other people. And they can experience me being out of myself, creating something for them.
Yeah.
I've done so much of that servitude, doing things for other people, and never really, and being okay with that back then because I was still developing things. I wasn't ready to bring out my own projects yet, even though I was developing them. I didn't want to reveal any of my original characters. I didn't want to really do any of that.
Mm-hmm.
So where I'm at now is like, okay, I've done so much for other people, and I look back at some of the things I've done, and I see that it hasn't been capitalized the way that I thought it would be. I don't see that it's being appreciated as much as I thought it would be. That the way that people view my artwork is not in line with the way that I view my art and the way that it should be viewed or whatever. There were so many different elements that I was like, I'm looking back at this and I'm like, I could have, if you just involved me more into what it was you were doing, I could have told you things that you could have done to maximize on this. Because I'm an IP guy. Intellectual marketing, that and like where to go with it was such a huge thing for me, and I feel like people just did not understand how much I knew how to push that. And
or they didn't trust
I was also
you.
not getting paid for it too. I feel like they trusted more in the visual aspect, like selling itself, more than the whole package.
Yeah.
They didn't understand the whole package. They didn't understand what I was truly capable of, and my artwork as a result just didn't, I don't know, I just feel like it didn't go where it was supposed to. When I did have control over that, I had personal issues happen and I fell flat on the ground, and I just didn't have that moment. So I'm like, you know what, I need more control over what that is, and today I need more control over that. And that means I can't be doing stuff for other people, because I feel like I'm always going to see the disappointment that I'm going to have toward that. Like Prince also had that too. Prince was like, he would listen to other people. He couldn't listen to other people's music because he would tear it apart. Like you'd sit there and go like, you could have done that better. You could have done that better. Like, oh, you know what? I'm just going to make my own song that like, you know, that improves on all these things that were lacking in this music. I feel the same way about my art. When I see my art with in the hands of others, I don't feel confident that they're gonna do what's necessary to make it work, even if I bring my A game, and that is draining.
Yeah.
To me, it really is draining.
Where you're giving, like the way you've explained this. Sorry to interrupt, but like
no.
this whole conversation, you've just explained how emotionally tied to your art you are. You know, so like it's an outlet. Even if you're getting paid for it, like you are giving portions of yourself, you know, to the art, right? So it's like
I think I can never disconnect that.
Yeah.
I can never really truly disconnect myself from that. Like, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's okay though. Like recognizing that is a really big growing point. Like the new era of StrikeBoogie is that, you know, like changing your name to that, having this defining like moment of, you know, I'm gonna re-enter and this is the way I'm gonna do things, and I'm gonna pursue art the way I believe is going to represent myself and my emotions the most authentically. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think like, you know, there's a lot of people that will see that as like, oh, well, you're not giving yourself opportunities to do a lot of work. And in some ways that's true, but really what you're talking about is servitude, right? So like overall, if you're going to be using your talents to benefit anybody, you know, like, yes, it would benefit you financially, right? To serve that art to other people or to a different project that isn't yours. But ultimately, what it means for you as an individual is that you are losing the emotional connection you had. And that in itself is sort of like dipping your toes back into the whole J strike thing. You know, it's an action or behavior that conflicts with the vibrational accord, the music you create as a person. And that distortion interrupts your life. And you recognize that. So that's beautiful. That's a very, very, it's not something I don't think anybody can really come to conclusions to easily without falling flat on their face or failing or, you know, experiencing that on a regular basis. So,
but the thing is, I feel like I already did when I was going through that meditation and I took a break and whatever. Like I had to come to the realization that was probably where things were headed. It's just only now, literally while we're talking, that I'm admitting to the public, literally admitting to the public that I do not want to be in servitude of anyone when it comes to visual art. I don't want to do it. Like, and I know that sounds really funny, but like, like I'm saying it is like, wait, but I asked you to do, you know, like, you know what I mean? But like, honestly, it's not where I want to be. Like, I don't want to be doing that. It's not like, I don't care if I lose opportunities. I know that if I turn around tomorrow and start drawing and whatever, people will probably pay more attention to my artwork than my music. It's probably likely. Because people are so used to me doing artwork and the capacity that I do it, the intricacy that I do it. It's just, there's something magical about the way people perceive my artwork. I understand that it's not per se at the level of my music, but I've been doing music a lot longer than I've been doing art. And people don't understand that either. And I just not passionate about doing artwork for people. I'm not passionate about it at all.
No, that's I think totally permissible. And thank you for, you know, coming on here and sharing that perspective for the first time too. Like that's really huge, especially being that you were a visual artist, like first and foremost, like entering the artistic world in the public eye.
Exactly.
But I mean, again, along with that comes like judgment and opinion and gossip related to things that aren't necessarily true. And so like to shed that is a really big thing too, because now you're no longer carrying the expectations of what you think everybody wants from you.
Exactly.
You know? So this, oh, sorry, go ahead. No, you were about to.
I was just gonna say, like what you were saying there too, like, sorry, do you mind just like recapping for 1 second? I just lost my train of thought there, and it was actually to add to what you were saying.
Yeah, I was just saying you were shedding the like expectations and opinions of what people were putting on you based on your visual art.
Yeah, and so yeah, there we go. So part of it is like I think people just never understood where I was, like where I was going, but that's because I held back on that. I didn't want to tell anyone what I was actually up to, and I think if I had done that, two things would have happened. One, I feel like people would have really tried to go out of their way to sabotage me. Like I really felt that. I really felt like people would not, if I told them, oh, I can do this, that, the other, and like the way that people used to react to my artwork alone was an assessment of why I did not tell anyone I could do everything else.
Well, you were saying that like your artwork evoked a certain connection and emotion, right? And those things are personal.
Yeah.
Right? So like people will take things personally related to things that would, like, even though it's your artwork, it's just like comic book artists and people who watch TV or Star Wars fans. You know, like they think it belongs to them, you know, but it's like it's not yours. That's not what that's the whole point of this, is like it's not yours. It's not personal. It's you know, it's just, it can just be. We talked about this, you know, in our conversation. Things can just be.
Yeah,
you
exactly.
know? Yeah, and having that.
Which is why I also did.
Go ahead.
No,
go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, I was just, when things can't just be, that's where I feel like this is where we get in a little bit of a conundrum, because art is designed to create connection and create emotional response, and so like to ask people to not do that, you know what I mean, not take it personally, conflicts with like the whole thing of what art does. So rather than like trying to. And not to like, tell you how you should have done anything. I think you did the right thing by not including anybody in the dialogue and saving it for like a podcast or conversation, because when you take anecdotes, tweets, opinion, short paragraphs, whatever it is you want to put on it, more P sounds.
Exactly.
related to it, it's easy to water down anything you say and just be like, well, fuck this person, they don't care about me. It's like, that's right, I don't, and I'm just making art to do it, and it's not that I don't appreciate you and how much you care about it, but like, this was part of, when I did your talk show, which we'll talk about in a little bit. When I did your talk show, it was that was during my like sort of figuring out what this was for me. And when we did our pre-talk show interview, I had sort of the revelation that, when I originally set out to do these conversations and talk shows, it was selfish. And when I say selfish, I mean in the sense that like I grow and become a better person by people sharing their experiences and perspective. And the talk show in itself was a very selfish endeavor from the start. Like the agreement I made was that it wasn't about, the chat interaction and like trying to get viewers. It was about me learning from somebody else's life experience and trying to understand who they are as a person because they interest me. And that was lost to me. I had lost that agreement somewhere along the way because of the showmanship, because of like, other people's opinions about the show or what I was doing, or me feeling like I didn't belong in the streaming space because the channel didn't fit the traditional, like, can we get some hype in the chat? Can we get love? Like, thanks for the gift sub, Tony, blah, blah, blah. Like that, it just didn't, again, like going back to what you were saying, that the J Strike, conflicting with who you were as a person, I was still exhibiting like Conky Dong 64 behavior. If anybody is in here that remembers that name. Like that was how I entered Twitch, was Conky Dong 64.
That's how I met you.
Yeah, that's how Boogie met me. And like that version of myself wasn't even the final form. It was the J Strike of Conky Talks. Like it was just like this weird era of like, I'm trying to figure out what I want to do in this space, and I'm adopting agreements that aren't mine, and like listening to people and watching how they do their channel and seeing their art on display and being like, well, maybe I should do more of that. You know what I mean? Instead of like making it my own, because I'm fully capable of doing this. Like the background, the art, like I can include other artists that can help me embody what I want to do. But if it's going to come down to moving it in, making shit happen on screen, whatever, like that is stuff that I have full control over. And like, I feel like, if it's not mine, the music or whatever, like anything related to involving myself into stream, at some point, the extension of myself was lost and that connection was cut, and I just didn't know what the fuck I was doing anymore, And so, thank you for, helping me get back in touch with that on your show. That was a really, really big moment for me.
Absolutely.
And I can't believe it was in April. It feels like it was like years ago because of
no, right.
how fucking time moves.
The fact
now.
that I even waited that long, like I feel like there's people in this chat right now that know very well that I'm working on a podcast that haven't even heard it yet. It's one thing that I literally have not shared with anyone, like in terms of the audio and stuff. I'm telling you, it sounds so sick.
I'm excited.
Yeah, I've literally held, like, even with the recordings that I have currently, I'm still like, I need a little longer, just a little bit longer. So yeah, it's been August, like, so it was April, sorry.
April, yeah.
April when I really started getting the guests back on, because of the COVID took like a whole chunk of that time away because most people weren't mentally ready to kind of do that.
Nobody was.
But, like nobody was, yeah.
Yeah, that shit was hard, yeah.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, but even after just like March and April, I still like waited and waited and waited. I wanted to have the right amount of people, the right amount of like magic going to like distribute it properly and stuff. So I'm there. It's just a matter of like we're really peering on like weeks now before it comes out.
Well, this is this is where we get into the next question. You know, what is next for StrikeBoogie, and that's part of this show, right? So like, you know, music is a way for you to do like make connection. Art has been a way for you to connect with other individuals, connect with people. Music, even more so, right? I think a lot of that because it's so intimate, like the synesthesia. I can't help but think that when something physically affects you based on like what you hear, right, that makes the connection deeper. But now we're talking about conversation. And so like being so in tune with like the grit and texture of how people speak, and when you ask a question and how they respond or contemplate or you know, just in general react to what's being asked of them. I can't help but like a podcast is like that the ability to speak for you and connect, but without music being extremely intimate, because now it requires honesty and impeccability with your word. So tell us a little bit about the show you're doing and, you know, what we can expect. You don't need to share everything, obviously, but.
Yeah, absolutely. So the show that I have, it's a radio podcast show called The Breakthrough Experience with StrikeBoogie, and the show entails talking about like breaking way past the surface level conversation and getting into the aspects of growth and milestones that happen in someone's life that get them to the point in which they decide to become a creator or their field of choice or whatever, or the reasons why they decide to exit from that. Because those are very important. I feel like people love these certain artists and they don't get to hear the real story of why they are where they are, or why they're happy to be where they are, or why they're not happy to be where they are. And these things are so important because we go through life passing each other by, and these little things that connect us are the things that can also help us grow. And I feel like the people who will be listening to the guests on my show will get a sense of connecting more with that person in a way that they never did before, because this person who's talking about these experiences are also connecting in a way they never connected before with themselves. And so it is very much a conversation between me and the guest, and not about the person being on the show to talk to a crowd of people. I'm not really promoting that. I'm promoting a conversation between two people and just being able to talk and being able to just express themselves in a way that they never did before, but without being too deep about it and without digging too much like some sort of like a paparazzi, you know.
You're good.
Really just, you know,
actually honest and authentic conversation, a genuine interest in the individual you're speaking to, which I can empathize with. And
I just have like conversation and just do the thing, you know.
No, that's great. And you what was the date you're expecting to do it, or should they keep an eye out on like social media for like announcements?
Keep an eye on social media. You're gonna hear something about it very soon. I'm gonna say that probably it's gonna be like the earliest of September. So like the first week of September for sure. If not like the late August. I'm more banking toward like the earliest of September, because I think that's where people are really gonna like start going back to work, and there's gonna be more of an energy of people like going in and out, and they're gonna want to listen to stuff. So like I'm probably gonna go for that.
Okay. Let's see. I think that's all the questions that I had related to the show. Was there anything that you wanted to talk about or extrapolate on further?
There was a little bit. There was also a little component to what you were saying. Like there's you know, when people usually care or the honesty behind when someone's like the honesty behind one's conviction. I just wanted to mention like a lot of like the one big thing that's changed about me is that I just don't give a fuck anymore. Like I literally just don't, because like I'm at an age where like I've had enough. I've seen enough of like people they always say like there's this one very general saying is when people see you in your element or whatever, they go, "Oh, you've changed," and and they make it seem like it's supposed to be a bad thing. And I've had a lot of people where I've grown up with in the past that have never changed, and like expected me to some degree not change.
Yeah, they take
And
pride
it's like,
in
well,
being.
do you really know who I am, or is it that you're afraid to change because you're afraid of losing what you understand about yourself, which is very outdated? And a lot of people, you can tell where their bookmark is with you, like when they start to say things, and a part of like why I don't care is that I see that there's a lot of people out there that when they start to project whatever it is that they think about you or whatever, you start to realize, oh, so that's where you put the bookmark in that, in which novel you put it in, of what you think my life is at. You just stopped getting to know me after whichever X amount of time, and now you think that that's where we can leave off, where you start to like bring things up and whatever. And I really just don't give a damn about that anymore. Like, I feel like there's so many people that they change and they're worried about that, but I'm not worried about, like people hold me to something of the past, because I've evolved, and evolution is not supposed to be it can be a scary thing, but it comes with so much reward. It comes with so much reward if you are evolving in a way that makes you happy. And if other people decide that you want to stay where they are, then if they decide to bring up stuff that you think that is going to be damaged, like for someone to even bring up, mistakes and things that I've done 20 years ago is completely obsolete. Like, I don't even remember half the shit that I was doing back then anymore, because I've moved past that.
Yeah.
And people just need to learn how to move past things in order to understand and appreciate the artistry and the reasons why people do the things that they do today.
Well said.
So I hope that you will, are at a point where you can accept the things that you were and embrace who you are now, so that you can become the even better version of yourself later too. Because I know that can be really hard to just look back and be like, what the fuck was I doing? Like, it's so easy to go back and do that.
Well, it's easy to like approach. It's just easy to approach it from like a place of judgment, like you like judge yourself super hard related to that. And like, it's not, I know it sounds weird, but like you don't take any things you did in the past, like personally against yourself. Like, and that's a weird thing to do. You thinking about the thoughts you think is such a fucking complex thing. And like understanding that your brain can think dimensionally is strange to like even think about. Like thinking in dimensions is fucking wild. Like, we don't have time travel. We don't have like anything from the MCU universe or like anything from comic books in place that like can explain it other than using those words. Like, you can think dimensionally, and when you do that, I mean, there's false realities that are created. There's responsibilities that you can put on yourself. There's agreements that aren't yours that like you can make. And I think it's really important to like take the time and take an inventory of what those agreements are, what you're doing, which ones are yours, which ones aren't yours, and like really breaking those, like, and I think like, thank you for the encouragement. I think that's one of those things where, I think the ability to do that is really understanding when it's that threshold, like seeing what that threshold is. Like, whoa, I don't want to cross that again. And it's not, I think having the expectation that you won't is probably the worst part. Like, that's another thing too. Like, for you as StrikeBoogie now, it doesn't mean that you can never go back to the J Strike era. Like, that's entirely a possibility. You already were there once, but you know what it looks like, And so I think a lot of that is like dabbling in the dimensions of forgiveness, where like you cross that threshold and you're like, fuck, I was not impeccable with my word. I recognize that as like a thing that I fucked up on. But that's okay. At the time I was doing what I thought would be the best thing for me. And that's not, okay. And, obviously if it's at the detriment of others, and like we're talking about like the Me Too movement, and like especially all this conversation related to like, fucking misogynistic behavior in the gaming industry, and hate raids and stuff happening on Twitch, and like Twitch needing to do better, like all of these things, like I think they're very valid, and they should be, there should be conversations about it. But it's very easy to get stuck in the momentum of like what other people are thinking and saying, and not listening. And I think listening is probably the hardest thing for most people to do. We're always trying to diagnose and fix and provide advice. And, you know, I myself admit, you know, like in the past, I was looking to give advice to people on a regular basis, have them call in, and I would share my perspective and give them advice and try to come from a perspective of like, you know, well, I created the persona Conky Talks, and with that came agreements that I didn't really recognize until I was taking an inventory of them. I was like, wait, why the fuck am I pretending that I know everything?
Yeah.
You know, and it wasn't even like I was consciously doing it. I was just, you know, we talked about it a little bit. You drive this car, your mindset, whatever you want to call it. You drive this car to and from work being like when you're performing or, you know, creating art, and you don't question what the fuck everything does. You're just like, I know what to do. I know the fundamentals of how to do this stuff, but like I'm not, I'm all of a sudden I'm at my destination and I'm unsatisfied or don't remember the journey. Why is that? You know, it's so super important to understand where that threshold of like where the art becomes elusive and it doesn't resonate with you anymore. And why does that happen?
Absolutely.
What is that? Why is that? I think that's super important, and it's for you to expect to be on one side of the line, never pass the threshold into like the terribleness or J Strike or Conky Donk 64 ever again. I think those expectations to have are super unrealistic, and instead just approach it with forgiveness.
Exactly.
Yeah. Wow. That was great. This was an awesome conversation. I do have some questions from the Q&A, but before we get to those. Was there anything you wanted to ask or anything you wanted to talk about in addition to what we just did?
Well, we were digging pretty deep. I know that you felt like there was things that you could definitely relate to with what I was saying. So I don't know if you have like just overall feelings about the conversation that you want to talk about.
Yeah. I mean, when it comes down to it, I don't know. I felt like, I mean, a lot of the stuff you're talking about wanting to connect with other people and like and using art as a way of connection, I found that it through conversation. So like for me, I always wanted to talk with people, even to the point of it being uncomfortable. And I think a lot of that happens with people who have ADHD. They don't have a good emotional barometer. So like and we talk about this on your podcast, I went to school for originally game art and design, and then found out I couldn't pursue that degree and started doing animation. And I spent like 6 months like animating characters, you know, in different emotional states. And that's when I was like, oh shit, now I'm starting to notice when I'm talking to people when I was working in retail, like, you know, they're uncomfortable with how long they've been talking with me. You know, they've got shit to do, lives to live, that sort of thing. And, or like when people are upset, like recognizing what that looks like. Before that, I didn't really have that like lens, you know?
Yeah.
And, so for me, it was always about like trying to connect with other people, learn from other people. I think a lot of that, you know, you talking about growing up in a big family, and, you know, not trying to get attention, but using art as a way of gaining attention and connection with other people. That was me with conversation. Acting out was definitely one of those things too that I did. Like I was definitely a troublemaker, not in the sense of protecting my sister, but like, you know, I was in a very troublesome, abusive relationship at home, emotionally. And so like, you know, when I was a teenager, I was just a big asshole, like from like 13 to 18, 19, like it was all about me. And I was like, fuck you. Like it was just metal music and being angry. And cause that's all I could do, you know, it was for a long time, I was like on the fight or flight thing. I was on flight, and then at some point it turned into fight, and I was fighting with everything, and not even acknowledging myself. So you talking about like your journey into art and being able to do that with connection. I always found that I was like the class clown, and I like making people laugh. But more importantly, I really enjoyed like connecting with my friends. High school wasn't my place for art necessarily, but I did get to like, I don't know. I had like a very unique high school experience. I reconnected with family friends that I had grown up with since we were babies. Reconnected with them through music. We were listening to Blink-182 and like punk rock. And then we would just like play, you know, fuck around and play instruments together. They live relatively close. I started going over their house, And then instead of like hanging out with anybody from high school it was after freshman year of high school, I just hung out with them. And it was the first time that I started out in that friendship. I remember that there were some people that that I got introduced to that didn't like me within that family circle, because it was their friends, not mine, right? And they're like, this kid's fucking annoying. Like, he just doesn't shut the fuck up. You know, like it was like that sort of level of things. And I realized it was because I was trying to overcompensate. Like, I was trying to like, you know, showcase that I have value, showcase that I am worth their time and attention. It was just a lot of like summers, weekends, weekdays of like going over to their house and just slowly shedding that shell of who I was and allowing me to just be that person without judgment. And it was super valuable to me. And then, yeah, I mean, like, I feel like all the emotions you're talking about of wanting connection, attention, striving to pursue anything that you felt like would fulfill those needs. I mean, that resonated with me throughout the entire conversation. So thank you for sharing all of that.
Absolutely. I think there was a question you had asked me and I didn't actually answer. It was, do I have any music that exhibits the level of anger that I translated into words and sound? And there's a couple of songs I feel like I go there.
Mm-hmm.
One of them I definitely go there. It's one of my older songs. It's called Profess, and I did it over the Fugees' Ready or Not beat. And I feel like I love that. I actually love listening to that. That's the one song that I actually feel like it's more of like an interlude. It was supposed to be a full song.
Mm-hmm.
And it would have embodied the level of anger that I was feeling at that time, because it's a good song, but I was like, I just wanted to be able to rap over a Ready or Not beat, but I really let a lot of emotion out on that song. I won't talk about the details of that, but
okay,
there's a lot of oppression there. There's a lot of oppression, and I was in a strange place at that time, so I put it out there. The other one that I feel like I had the most control, as StrikeBoogie, I feel like No Guarantee, the one I had released last before the single Sail Away, exhibited my ability to be able to talk about things with anger, but with control.
Okay. All the discography too is on StrikeBoogie's website here. So let me post for you. I know we got the Sail Away link there, but let me put the discography in the chat for anybody who wants to check it out.
Yeah. So the discography on my website includes the stuff that is actually not on my discography. Like, what I consider to be on my discography is what's available on Spotify and iTunes and stuff. There is a part of it, though, that I like. No matter what music I create, if it's just like a SoundCloud exclusive, I'll still have it in the discography on my website. Mm-hmm. So you can get access to the songs that I have released, regardless of which order it's in.
Awesome. Okay. Links in the chat if you guys want to check that out. And then I have two questions.
Okay.
Hayat Tad.
Oh, yeah, that's Adam. Yeah. Adam Hayat. Awesome.
He had, or his question was... Wait, where... Ooh, I think I had a malfunction in here. It was something about being a multifaceted artist.
I have it here in the chat. Do you want me to just read it?
Oh, yeah. I don't know why it didn't post for me. That was super weird.
Yeah, that's the first question that came up, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I can read it. So it says, it feels a bit like the multifaceted artist that you speak of is a dying breed. That being said, what contemporary artist group inspires you the most? Contemporary meaning like current?
I don't know. Let me see.
I always have
Yeah,
a struggle
occurring,
with
living or occurring at the same time. So current, yeah.
Inspires me the most that actually lives. Damn, there isn't.
Currently? Really? No artist currently, you're like...
I really don't think that anyone is really tapped into the kind of capacity that I feel like Prince has, or
Okay.
anyone. Not to say that there's never going to be anything like that. It's just that I really feel like there isn't. And I feel, okay, we're in an era where people literally pick up a program on their phone or their photo, like they pick up something and it's like a partially generated thing, and then they then call themselves the thing that they think they are. I think there's so many artists out there, there's so many people out there that would call themselves artists who are not actually, they don't really know what they're doing inside out. They just fast pass it, which you go to a theme park and you get the fast pass, which gets you faster in the line for the ride that you want to jump on. I feel like there's so many people that treat the arts like some sort of a fast pass. As long as they're able to get to the destination, it doesn't matter how they get there.
Okay, that makes sense.
And I don't see artists really digging into their craft in a way that is like exceptional, to the point where I'm like, at one point I thought I really, it's a controversial thing to say that Kanye was one of the only artists that I felt like was really onto something, but these days I don't feel like, I feel like he was so much more talk than he was action. Like there were so many opportunities for him to put himself out there as someone who claimed to be multifaceted, who claimed to have these forward-thinking I don't know,
ideas,
whatever it was that he thought,
whatever
he thought he could do. I never saw that. So for me, I just feel like he didn't present himself at the way that he was putting himself out. I feel like he is one of those people that just thinks that he should be congratulated for doing these small things, and I just don't appreciate that. Missy Elliott I consider to be forward thinking. I also still feel like she hasn't put out a lot of the stuff that she used to put out in the capacity, but that's her business. But generally I don't really feel like I haven't really been able to relate to anyone that's doing things at a capacity that I feel like is going to change the arts and entertainment, which is why I feel like I've put even more effort into doing that, so that I feel like there will be a chain reaction. If one day someone recognizes me doing stuff and they go, this man is literally the multifaceted man that, and I present myself in the right way, that there will be a new wave of artists who will actually have existed that never really got the limelight, that will finally be able to be recognized, because there's at least one person that's being recognized doing that. Maybe I'm not paying attention enough to
well, you're focusing primarily on your craft too, so it's like, that I can't even, I do the same thing. Like to be always in tune with like the latest album coming out, the latest music, the latest news, the latest anything, it's just so fucking overwhelming. Like I already got a hard drive full, like of shit in my brain. If I learn enough of something, something's leaving, and I don't know what that is until I need to recall it. I think like in the era of information, I think it's just imperative for you to prioritize the things that you feel like you should be paying attention to.
Exactly.
And then everything else will just happen. Like I feel like there's no, other than, and this is morbid, but it's true, other than sudden death, I don't think there's anything that's going to prevent you from revisiting anything at any point in time. Like I don't have a prerogative to see the latest movie or do any of that shit if it doesn't interest me. Those things will happen in time or with the right person who introduces it to me, or like, I trust the people in my circle and individuals that I speak with to be like, hey, I thought of you when this, and I'm like, yeah, I'll fucking check it out. Like that's when I'll pass that threshold, but otherwise it's not worth my fucking time. Because even then, it's not even the art that intrigues me. It's the person who thought of me. You know what I mean? I'm like, thank you for thinking of me. First of all, that makes me feel real special. Yeah. And for sure, I'll check it out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So our next question comes from Hey Cletus. So what are your hopes for your next creative evolution? And we kind of touched on this a little bit, but I think it's still an interesting question.
What are my next steps in the next evolution?
Yeah.
I feel like that's. I had a friend who used to ask me this all the time when we spent a lot of time together. He always expected me to jump into another. It would always happen. There would always be these eras that I would have. I have many eras, and so I just jump into the next one. He's like, "Holy crap! What are you gonna do next?" And I feel like another era is coming. I feel like when this podcast comes out, I feel like when my music is finally like running itself, I feel like when I finally dabble into the arts, like visual arts, in the way that I needed it to come out and the way that it should, I feel like when all these pieces come together, something's going to happen. I don't know what it is. I don't know how that's going to change me. I just know that the focus is always going to be forward marching. Whatever it is, I need to look at it, appreciate it, and move on to the next thing. I don't want to be too focused on what that is. I won't be focused on this era right now, but I will appreciate where it's taking me, because what happened last year versus this year, that's an era in itself. I think I was like where I'm going right now, it just feels so good. Like I have my office studio, and it's just like the way it's looking. Like the other day, I just looked at it and I was like, this is looking like one of those YouTube studios that I see online that I've been like looking at and wanting to like, and I'm like, do I even remember how I fucking got here? Like, it's sort of weird. Like, and it's only a year, right?
Yeah.
Last year I was getting the little things there, but now I'm like, holy crap! I'm looking behind me. I'm like, I have a fucking couch and the lights and everything, and this thing looks like in front of me looks like something out of control, and like I look like I'm like Batman in his Batcave, and it's crazy. Like I feel good about that. But at the end of the day, that's not important to me. That's aesthetics are not important to me. Functionality is important. I'm just aiming to be more functional, like to be able to function better.
Yes.
To be able to do all the things that I want to do and do it well.
Mm-hmm. And the freedom and autonomy to do so.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
And boy, am I excited for that. I'm excited for the capacity in which things start to finally come out. The quality that I've been aiming for, that I've been so meticulous about, to finally be a thing. Like the art drawing sessions I used to do, and being able to go on Twitch and maybe finally start showing people me drawing again, because I love doing that. I love drawing, and that's how you met me. I was drawing, and you saw me doing my thing, and I was enjoying it. Then I had all these technical issues and stupid shit, and like, oh my god, my camera's dead, and look at me. I am really ready. I'm really ready for that again, and like
awesome
what that encompasses. So yeah.
Very cool.
The next era's coming. I definitely, I can feel it.
Just a more, I think it's like, it's not, I don't even know if it's a next era, right? It's, when you say next era, it makes me think of like, something new, is on the horizon, or, and the context of this conversation has been like, okay, we're no longer, Dark Child, we're moving into J-Strike, and then we're no longer J-Strike, we're in StrikeBoogie. Now it's like
so
Strike.
It's not really a new era,
yeah. So it's like a refining, is really what it is. Like the autonomy and freedom to do whatever you'd like to in this persona that is like, fundamentally like where you'd like to be. It's like you've refined the fundamentals and have such a deep knowledge of the fundamentals that you are now free to go wherever you need to using those. Like the creative alchemy that we talked about earlier in the show, like this is the most nutrient dense version of that. If it was like a drink, like you're sipping it on a regular basis and you're able to go wherever the muse takes you. And that's a beautiful thing, so here's to the refining of StrikeBoogie. So thanks so much for being on the show, man. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Cheers to that. All right.
Yes.
Does anybody have any more questions related to Boogie, StrikeBoogie, or anything that you may have wanted to ask but didn't get a chance to? I'll open the floor up to that right now.
Ninjatron is an awesome guy. Actually, Ninjatron is one of the very few people that saw me from the very beginning of my evolution till now.
Wow.
I met Ninjatron when I walked into one of his classes, him teaching how to draw anime and stuff. I was there with the founding people of my little collective, and he was one of the people who actually was there when I first started drawing, and not really first started drawing, but like drawing publicly and professionally.
Yeah.
And he's literally seen me through many of my eras because he's stuck around and we've kept in contact. So he's one of the very few people that understands this conversation and like where I am today and what that means. So we are only becoming more powerful, my friend. Nice.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right. Well, yeah. Thank you again for being on the show. I knew this was going to be a good one. And again, like, I don't know. It was one of those things where, again, like I had left my site up for people to like schedule, and I just didn't think to disable it. And I'm so happy that I didn't, because I don't know if I would have gotten the notification until like August, and I probably would have hit you up and be like, hey, can we do this earlier? So
yeah.
So regardless, thank you so much for being on the show. And then the Breakthrough Experience podcast, look forward to seeing that in September-ish or earlier. Again, make sure you're following StrikeBoogie on social media, YouTube, all the links posted there. His latest single, Sail Away, is out now. Be sure to check it out on DistroKid. There are his links there. So that's it. Boogie, thank you so much. StrikeBoogie, thank you so much for being on the show, and thank you for sharing your wealth of knowledge, experience, and perspective. It is a pleasure.
Thank you, Conky. Thank you, bro.
All right, everybody. I'm not going to rate anybody just because, the nature of the talk show. My focus is the guest and the people who are in here. So y'all have a wonderful Saturday. Thank you so much for being here, and we'll catch you later, okay?
Peace, y'all.